All right, I'd like to call to order the February 24th, 2025 Mountlake Terrace Planning Commission meeting to order. Please take the roll.
Chair Batista.
Here.
Vice Chair Betcher.
Present.
Commissioner Morgan.
Present.
Commissioner Landis.
Here.
Commissioner Stenson.
Present.
Commissioner Thompson. I do not see Commissioner Thompson online, and Commissioner Wu is currently absent as of roll call.
Okay, move on to item number 3, approval of the January 27th, 2025 meeting minutes. Anybody have any changes or corrections to those? I am not hearing or seeing any, so we'll go ahead and declare those accepted as presented. Item number 4, public comment. Let the record show there is no public comment, or there's no public here tonight in person. Is there anybody who signed up to make any public comment online?
No one has signed up online to make public comment.
All right, we'll move on to item number 5, 2025 Planning Commission Work Plan.
Hey, good evening, everyone. So a couple items that we need to take care of tonight is, one is your work plan for this year, for the work that needs to be done. A lot of it is coming off of what you worked on last year, and then some legislative requirements that we also have from the legislature for different things that need to be updated, as well as far as primarily middle housing and critical areas ordinances. And we're going to get that work plan up here. And then the second thing is going over your annual report that for the work that you accomplished back last year in 2024. And I see that our annual report says 2025. Should say annual report for 2024. So just want to let you know, as part of this is the Planning Commission presents our work plan to council every year. March 13th is presentation of all commissions and group work plans. Planning Commission is no exception to that. So that's on March 13th at 7 p.m. here in council chambers. The good news is that the Planning Commission is the first group to present their work plan. So that's kind of cool. Because there's several groups that will be presenting. This has been done different ways, of where the whole Planning Commission has shown up to present your work plan, and then it's also been just the chair with staff. So I'll leave that up to you guys about how you want to present that, but we'll move from there and talk about it a little bit more tonight. And then as far as presenting the work plan and accomplishments, the chair also signs a memo, which has been prepared for Chair Batista to the council, basically in preparation of this meeting. So taking a look at your work plan, most of it is CED related, although there are some other things that are going on in the city that require Planning Commission review as well. So for plan updates, we have on the list, we have water and sewer comprehensive plan updates. These plans, current plans are out of date. The engineering department, Public Works, is working with consulting engineers to update those plans currently. And those will be coming to you tentatively in late fall of this year, and then they will move on for adoption with council. So I tentatively have late fall of 25 through 26, but the 26 is more likely that it's going to be at city council at that time. So just taking a look at that. Right now, next step in our process is we have ARPA funds for a housing action plan, along with our code updates for our, essentially our zoning and development code amendments and middle housing updates kind of all rolled into one. So for the housing action plan, that there was some ARPA money set aside for doing that work. That was the monies that were given to state and local governments during the pandemic to get projects and plans implemented, basically as part of those monies that came from the government. And so part of that money is going to be doing explicitly a housing action plan. So that's going to dovetail with our zoning work. We've done a lot of the housing work as part of the comp plan. And if you remember, Leland Associates did a lot of housing work as well, because that really framed what we did for our housing element of the comp plan. And also when we took a look at how we were going to try to implement some of this middle housing, we needed a lot of that information. So this plan's going to take that information and then add to it with a development feasibility analysis here for the city. So, you know, it's like all things, we can say we want these things as part of planning, but let's do some feasibility to see what's more likely to be developed here in the city and how we can support those efforts to make sure that people are able to do so under the guise of zoning, and then get some additional basically implementation or action strategies in order to do that, to get more housing in the city. And then we will also be going through what we do every year at the end of the year is going through the comp plan docketing process. And this is going to be more for individuals that potentially want to do a comprehensive plan amendment where local jurisdictions can open up their comp plan once a year for someone to propose an amendment to that. And council has the jurisdiction of whether to entertain that amendment or not. Typically, our council opens that up. We don't usually have, there's been two since I've been here in the last 7 years, so not a lot of requests for amending that. I doubt that we'll have a lot of requests for that with the new comp plan as well, but we'll see. And we still go through the process for that. For code updates for this year, we have quite a few, and a lot of this is legislative requirements that you'll see. So we need to amend our subdivision provisions to allow for what's called unit lot subdivisions. So along with this middle housing, there's additional mechanisms as far as subdivision goes, and there's quite a bit of proposed legislation this year about making subdivision process not only for short subdivisions, which are 9 lots or less, but for all subdivisions to be administrative, or there's proposals to not even require approvals in some cases if you want to divide a lot. So there's a lot of stuff going on, but we'll need to amend our, what is Title 17 subdivisions to add for unit lot subdivisions, make sure that we're consistent with state legislation. We also have a required review for our critical areas provisions. So that's steep slopes, wetlands, fish and wildlife habitat areas, floodplain areas, etc. And so we updated that last in 2019. We have a required update to be done by the end of this year. Work has started on that, and there is a consultant working with us right now doing the background analysis. So some of the kind of heavier lifting when we're talking about some of the more critical habitat elements and such to our critical areas ordinance, but you'll see staff taking through the actual provisions of the chapter. And this is much like we did last time, where we got some help some professional help where we don't have it in office. And then staff will be bringing these to you as we go. So Sarah Pizzo has been, by the way, promoted to senior planner. And so she'll be bringing that to you on a couple occasions. And then we're hoping to have that adopted early fall of this year. So want to kind of dovetail that in after we get the middle housing and zoning code updates done. For the middle housing updates, we're required to do quite a few legislative requirements, as you guys are aware of, accessory dwelling units, middle housing types, 2-plex, 4-plex, 6-plexes, all those different things. And then additional legislation for proximity to light rail or transit, certain transit facilities. In addition to that, when we updated our comp plan, you'll remember that we essentially changed pretty much every zoning district in our comp plan. So we are putting together that work to bring you some information at your next planning commission meeting. And so I've kind of just put that also under development code amendments. We'll have some urban design standard things to figure out. I think Cedar Plaza and around Cedar Plaza and some of the other things that are kind of still hanging out in the air. So we're getting help from Echo Northwest as a consultant and Methune, who does urban design and has helped some different jurisdictions with how do we do that, meet legislation and kind of meet goals and policies of the city and recommendations for that. So we are working with them. We have an internal meeting tomorrow to kind of go over some getting into more of the nitty gritty. Right now we have a work session, public work session that we have slated for March 26th. And so we'll be doing a public open house and work session on this, but you guys will be seeing it initially on the 10th at your next meeting to kind of get underway with your thoughts and review. We're also going to have interviews for the zoning portion of it, a group of about 8 stakeholders. I'm anticipating that some of those people are going to be from the CPEG and other people that have been involved, just because they're going to get a sense of the work that's been done and asking the questions, are we on the right track? Are we implementing this the way that you thought we were implementing it or should be implementing it, and getting their thoughts and perspectives. So we're putting that group together right now. I'll have more for you as far as who those are. And then for the housing action plan, we thought a better strategy would be to get a stakeholders group together along with the folks doing housing in our city or people that have reached out to us, St. Pius and others that have wanted to do some different type of housing, to have them as part of a stakeholders group as well. So that's kind of tentatively what we're looking at. As you guys know, we have a very short timeline by the state. We have to have this adopted in June of this year. So doing that. And then we have some requirements for permitting timelines that actually went into effect in January 1 of this year. This legislation also gives local jurisdictions some ability to kind of morph these timelines. Just haven't had time to do that with staff changes and what all the stuff that we have going on. But we intend to take a look at that, and that would be some amendments to our chapter 1805 that would be done in summer after we kind of get what we really need to get done, which is the zoning and development code amendments as well. And then we'll be doing development review updates for you folks, as we always do, taking a look at roughly a 6-month basis, coming back to you in spring and fall for that. I also don't have code compliance, but we'll be reaching back out to Planning Commission and just kind of keeping you guys up to date on maybe some of the bigger code compliance issues and where we're at, and just making sure that some of the changes that just got adopted are working as we hope, to try to clean up some ongoing community problems that we have, and making sure that the cure is what we are hoping that it's going to be as far as provisions in our code. So we'll be doing that as well. I think I hit, engineering design manual. Last year we did a big edits to engineering design requirements, or in some cases we had no engineering design requirements in the city for a number of years. And so we're going to take a look at that again. It's been in place for will be in place for about a year when we take a look at that, just to see if that is working as intended, or if we need to do some tweaks to that. So staff will be working with city engineer Rich Meredith and his team just to make sure that that's moving along efficiently and we haven't run into any issues with that. So this is kind of a draft. As you guys know, we take this to city council, and city council says, go forth. I don't know that city council has ever changed the draft work plan, as I'm aware. Nick, you would know more than I do, but not since I've been here. But also wanted to open this up for conversation with you folks to see if you think that we're missing anything here, or we need to make any changes to this.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions on some of the stuff we talked about, and
Okay.
some things that I would like to see on here.
Okay.
I wasn't sure when you said you were going to be interviewing developers, like how, kind of like a how's it going type.
It's not.
Is it going to be more like a questionnaire you're going to send them?
No, so it'll be the consultant team, and we'll be getting those questions together. And it's not just developers.
Okay.
It's going to be just like the Citizen Advisory Committee was made of different diverse people. So just citizen, diversity, equity, and inclusion member, people that worked on the original plan. I would imagine there'll be a developer or two, but we only have roughly about 8 folks. And so it's going to be a wide range of people that will be selected to participate in that.
Okay. So is it going to be like a all at the same time type of deal, or are they individual?
They're individual, and they'll be interviewing them separately.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's the consultants that will be doing that?
Yes, and I'll probably sit in for those like I did last time. We did a series of interviews initially to start out, or as part of the comp plan process. And so I think we'll, at least for the economic portion, and so I'll probably sit in again, and we'll formulate some questions for that. But the intent is not just to have one voice, but to kind of have a wide selection of voices like we did last time.
Would it be, I'm sure we'll, get a report, but would it be possible for planning commissioners just to sit in and, kind of listen as well? Or is that more just, we'll just get it when you report it to us?
I can talk to the group. Like I said, we're meeting tomorrow and kind of starting to put the fine print on moving forward and getting more concrete dates than I had for you today. I have a few of them, but just how we're going to go through this whole entire process. So I can ask if PC can sit in. I think one of the things that we found And it may be true even for my participation, is that we want people to be comfortable and be honest when they get interviewed. And sometimes it's best to have a neutral third party kind of do the interviewing, which is fine with me. I don't want anybody to feel like they have to hold their thoughts in what they share, for us to just make sure that we're getting folks' complete comments on something. So that might be a route that we go to, and I wouldn't even participate in that. And that's cool with me too. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So,
And then, having just gone through the comp plan process, and, we had to be very mindful of legislative changes and things that were sort of being forced upon us. Some of them we, were very happy to do. Others, we felt we were kind of hamstrung and not being able to go as far as we wanted to go because of how the law was written. But, that being said, because you mentioned Cedar Plaza, so I bring it up. We spent a lot of time talking about that area. So are there still things out in the ether that need to be addressed with certain sub areas that we dealt with as part of the comp plan?
I would say particularly, so we've got twofold, I think, one of which we can tackle right now, which is we have the outlines for all the new zoning land use designations, as you guys know. So we have the bones, but then now it's the detail portion of it, right? And Cedar Plaza comes to mind because we kind of talked about this tiered approach around those areas. And so to me, that's where I think we're going to be concentrating more on. Some areas might kind of just be overall general standards that we come up with for this middle housing, but there might be more specific requirements where we're talking about what we'd like to see around more of those kind of neighborhood centers that we talked about. So I think, that's going to need more work in that capacity. And then some of the legislation that limits design requirements around transportation facilities in some cases, and some instances where we are not going to be able to require any parking close to the transit center per state law requirements. So though I'm sure those are going to be a topic of conversation.
That was actually going to be another question that I had, since it's in this legislative session that they're talking about it. And I know the Association of Washington Cities is advocating a no vote, which I tend to agree with because I don't like the state making policy decisions that affect us at the local level that are that drastic. But if that passes, then they're really saying thou shalt not mandate certain, parking requirements across the board. And so I take it if that passes, then we're going to have to spend time redoing all of our codes and policies.
Yeah, and it might be, we're bound by what was passed for this cycle. Who knows what the legislative cycle puts out this time. You guys know it goes through committee, and then this committee, and then that, and then it gets altered, and then it dies. So I think our approach should be, let's deal with what we know is real, and we come up with new zoning and requirements based on that. And then depending on what the legislature does, then we'll see what the timelines are for that. Do we have, a lot of people are just like us. They're in the first wave of doing their comp plans. Everybody's just adopted their comp plans. Oh, wait. And then the next group is in the middle of their comp plans. And, oh, wait. So, we're just going to have to kind of see. I have a sneaking hunch that this is going to be happening in the foreseeable future, of where my issue is if you pass legislation, you haven't given any time for any type of implementation whatsoever.
Are we, I know like I said, Associated Washington Cities is really, come
Yeah.
out clear. And obviously, Mountlake Terrace is a part of the Associated
Right.
Washington Cities. Everybody, all the cities in the state pretty much are. Is the city reaching out directly to our elected officials in Olympia to explain
Both. Yeah.
the potential downside to this? I mean, I get
Yes.
there are eager beaver legislators down there who think, hey, this is a great idea and let's just do it, and not understanding the consequences.
Well, and it's kind of, I think the trouble is one size fits all, and we'll see that a lot, where some jurisdictions have already tried to tackle some issues like we have, and then it's kind of a one size fits all approach for everybody. East and west size, small cities, medium cities, big cities, and planning really doesn't work that way. So typically we'll get the legislation as staff. We'll make our comments to the city manager, which get relayed to our lobbyist. So the state lobbyist will comment via the city on our concerns for any legislation that deals, with the city. And then we also have a lobbyist that works at the federal level for legislation. So if there's a outreach directly to our representatives, then that's typically done by council and via the city manager as well.
Okay.
So staff, I wouldn't be calling up a state
No.
a rep. Yeah.
I'm sure.
Just commenting though, and we do actively follow the legislature during legislative session.
Because I'm sure, our neighboring cities that are developed like we are, we kind of share the same legislators depending on which
Yep.
district you're looking at. And we have all the same issues. And, I'm just sort of flabbergasted sometimes the votes that come out from a living, and just like, are you paying attention to what your district is actually like and how this, affects them? It's, I mean, I'm sure we all have these, high-minded urbanist ideals. I certainly do, I think it bears that out in our discussions with our sub-area plans and what we want to see with our city.
Sure.
But we also have to recognize
Right.
where we're located geographically within the region, and it's just, unfortunately, it's just sort of still auto dependent, and we don't want to, we want to shy away from that, but at the same time, it's, you can't just quit it cold turkey.
Yeah, and I think there's good intent, and understandably, trying to improve the housing stock and affordability for folks to have a place to live and all of those things. But when we're doing that, there's also what I call the real world, which is water, sewer, transportation, accessibility, stormwater, sustainability, environmental concerns. And so it's all kind of, it all plays off of each other, and every community is unique. The premise of growth management is kind of, here were the guidelines planned for your local jurisdiction. I think what we're seeing now the last couple of years is more of a top-down state approach to requirements of the local city, more so than we saw in the past. And so we'll see what happens during this legislative session, I guess.
So the comment you just made actually gets to the next point I wanted to bring up, and that was actually the first item on this list, the updates to the water and sewer comprehensive plan. Obviously, sort of a roadblock between what we had hoped to see in terms of our comp plan and sort of our upzoning, kind of reality slapping us in the face and said, hey, it's a capacity issue.
Right.
As part of this comp plan, will there be a section that says this is what would be required to meet those kind of goals that we had originally wanted?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, it has to be a part of that, because we essentially said in our overall land use comp plan, there were things that needed to be addressed in order to get those capacities for the 20-year time period.
Yeah. But
Because,
even beyond that. It's
oh,
just-
yeah, but I mean,
because-
we're not reaching 20 years right now.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
just, it was, I mean, it was probably the biggest frustration of that plan, just flat out saying, it's like, how we want this city to be, we can't have it because of our water capacity
Right.
and our sewer capacity.
Right.
So then my first question is, well, how do we get there?
Right.
And, some of it is obviously going to be infrastructure, but, I'm sure part of it too is where we're getting the source from, is there more, can we even get more water? How would that
Right.
work out? It's just like, we can build up our sewer capacity, but it's got a link to the processing plant. So it's, we're a cog in a bigger machine, but it's like, how can we get that? Because it's bad enough that we had to sort of defer sort of our ideals for the near term, just because it's like we can't even meet the minimum goals that we want right now. But how do we get to those more high ideal
Right.
goals? Because I think, in a few more comp plan cycles, we're going to have to be looking. It was like, got to absorb more house. We got to
Right.
absorb more people.
Right.
How are we going to do that? We need that capacity, and so at least start laying out, a rough framework now in that comp plan, saying, okay, it's like we know near term there's no money to do this. There's, we don't have the capacity to do this, or the water capacity isn't even there just to say, hey, we got the money to buy more water from Alderwood Water District, but it's not there. Well, what's plan B to up our water capacity, up our sewer, just, it's going to hit us at some point. So it's just, if we can start having that discussion now, and that hopefully at some future comp plan update, we can say, hey, we have a game plan now to meet these capacity issues. We can actually look at the upzoning that we kind of wanted to do this time around,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
weren't able to.
Yeah, and I think that those conversations are occurring. Alderwood Water District and the water purveyors came to city council not last week, but I want to say the week before, and spoke on that about treatment capacity for the sewer district and water capacity, which we get from the city of Everett. And then there's the storage, and then there's stormwater concerns about a lot of our stormwater runoff is going to the sewer treatment plant and the cost of basically treating stormwater, et cetera. So those conversations are already happening and are part of those comp plan updates, basically. And then how those are shared percentage-wise between each jurisdiction, right? So that's all, basically transportation, water, and sewer and stormwater are huge in what we're doing land use wise, right? We gotta be able to flush the toilet. We gotta be able to turn on the sink. You gotta be able to get there. So all those infrastructure things are pretty significant, and storage of water, very significant for the city. So yeah, there's quite a few things, but those things are occurring right now. Or that update of that information. But you can, if you want to look back at that conversation from a couple of weeks ago with city council, that was kind of a start, at least publicly, of some of those communications.
Do we know if there is the same concern in terms of electrical capacity with?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just figure since we're on the topic of
Sure.
utilities.
Yeah. I think,
Consumption would obviously increase as we start seeing this develop. So
yeah, I think more in that arena, it's kind of more the requirements for undergrounding or basically franchising agreements, and those type of things have been more of a hot button with that utility than capacity.
okay. And then I know this is a hefty list already. I mean, not a lot. I mean, we've had plans in the past that are a lot more in terms of
Oh, yeah.
lines, but these lines are substantial. What we have here. Having said that, Is there any way to have added as a goal to maybe start having the discussions of either the next sub areas that we want
Sure.
to address,
Yeah,
and also us examining the size of the sub areas, because there was some discussion about, hey, maybe they're too big, maybe they need to be smaller, more neighborhood and based. I know they kind of go hand in hand. But, the early discussions are easy, but the actual work may be a big lift. We integrated 2 of the sub area plans into this comp plan process, but just them on their own, that's still that was a lot of discussion that we had, and a lot of work that, consultants probably ended up having to do. So I know the bandwidth is limited, but
yeah,
if there is a way that we can work that in, at least
yeah,
the beginning of that
sure.
this year's.
I think that's doable. I tried to rely on trying to get things done by fall as far as our required updates. I mean, we do have a lot of work in a short time period, but if we can get the critical areas updates and subdivisions and this other stuff done, and then get the housing action plan done by, we're thinking shooting for July, so have a June on the zoning. We have a little bit, we don't have a mandate for the housing action plan where we have legislative requirement to say, okay, July, then that would give us, kind of late fall, winter months to start sub area. And to me, it seems like the critical first step for that is analyzing the current sub areas and having that discussion of, do we keep 6 sub areas? Do we modify those boundaries? Are they something different than they are right now? So I think as a starting point, instead of just diving into a particular sub area or 2, does that sound like a good idea to just re-examine how we have the sub areas laid out at this first attempt?
I would agree with that, because I kind of think, now, especially how we're trying to develop some of these commercial cores, kind of like stealing a page from Seattle, it's kind of like an urban village concept, whereas like, these commercial cores are a lot different than the periphery of those areas, and, how a sub area really is defined right now is just, it's like, you're just all lumped into one, and they're polar opposites. So, maybe looking at that and, having more an urban village approach to the commercial areas, and then the more sort of neighborhood approach to the others. But, I'm all big on the, sort of like neighborhood identity and branding. That's kind of been my, been my rallying cry for decades here. Though that's a good selling point, for, growing these neighborhoods too, is having that identity, and that identity almost everywhere feeds off of, how strong their commercial area is. So, there's some relation, but yet they're still different. So I would agree. I think looking at that first will then feed into the discussion. It's like, okay, do we keep it as a 6, or do we increase the numbers and have multiple concepts, like a commercial urban village versus what we right now typically is just, sort of the single family residential that sort of feeds into each one of those.
Yeah, I think we do. There's money in the budget after we get through this planning process, and I think we kind of spoke about this somewhat for 2026. That doesn't mean we can't start using it in 25. Let's start the conversation in 25, where we're talking about sub areas and the boundaries and maybe neighborhood, and then we can roll into doing some additional sub area work next year.
Okay. The only thing I got for right now then is probably just to make sure to correct the date at the top of the on the top of the draft. Mine says 2024.
Oh, it does. I've got 2025 here, so I don't know.
Maybe I got an old copy here.
Well, it says 2024 on here too.
Oh.
Okay, so, sure. I'm not sure how we got that old date on there.
Like I said, that's all I had for now. So does anybody
Okay.
else have any Comments, suggestions, additions? Commissioner Betcher.
Thank you. So you mentioned the, maybe I'll go kind of in Chair Batista's order here.
Okay.
You had the focus groups and the, I don't remember the exact word you used for them, for the housing action plan and some of these other things. And there was a suggestion, it sounds like you're still working out exactly how it's going to work. Is it possible, I know, I'd be interested to hear what they have to say. Is it possible to also ask them questions? We've got expertise that I would like to learn from.
Okay, to ask who questions?
The focus groups. I would like to understand, sort of if we have questions for them, is that possible?
I think maybe the best way to do that, I can talk about the Planning Commission for stakeholder, kind of that setting and how to handle that. We were gonna try to work with HASCO and some other of the housing groups to be a part of that and then invite folks into that. So I'll mention that tomorrow, that the Planning Commission would like to ask questions or kind of be a part of that, participate in that. And I don't see why you couldn't participate in that, effort. So we're trying to get that situated and get a date on the calendar for that as well.
Great. Yeah, I know, we've got sort of a weird plat in a lot of areas. We've got a big mix of large and small lots. And I think it'd be really helpful to get their opinions on some of the challenges they see and if there are things we can do to streamline them, and also, if they're a mission-driven organization, if there are things the city can be doing to support their overall mission, of which housing is a part. So if I can't ask those questions, I would like to hear about those things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in that case, I wouldn't imagine there's any pushback or whatever, or that could be formulated as part of the materials and the questions as far as the group goes. So, yeah, I don't see that would be a problem. I'll talk to the group tomorrow about some of the Planning Commission's desires to be involved in that. So,
sure, great.
Yeah.
The other thing that I'd sort of like to see addressed more in this work plan is the transportation master plan. Not to add to this, obviously, fairly large and loaded schedule. It does seem like a lot of our work is kind of in the beginning of the year, and with the update of the engineering design standards, I know there's some different metrics and things that we've been asked to look at for the state, like level of, multimodal level of service, that I think would be better to get done sooner rather than later, because it'll have influence in things like, how do we classify our streets? Is the legislature going to give us options for new kinds of streets where, it's more of a mixed pedestrian car street, and maybe you have to build some curbs somewhere, but maybe is that a cheap and fast way to get a faster multimodal level of service? These are kind of questions that I think we should be exploring, and the longer we delay, I think the harder it is going to be as we look at sort of all the other things that are coming down from the state in terms of what actually gets built on the parcels. But I think what happens in the rights of way is also pretty important. So if we're able to squeeze that in maybe towards I don't know when we were thinking of doing that, but.
Yeah, that's kind of out of my purview. I know that there was some work done on the TMP last year by engineering, and I can speak to John, who's our traffic engineer, kind of about thoughts on the TMP and some of the things they're doing. I know they're working on several plans that were outdated and information that they needed to work on. So I can relay some of that information back and kind of priorities for transportation this year.
I would say that, that doing that is extremely important because street design plays into urban design
Sure.
big time. We're transportation as a profession, they're finally trying to get out of the engineering camp and kind of going more into the urban design camp as well, which is tough for the engineers who think like engineers instead of designers and planners. I know, NACTO has a lot of guidelines for street design. And again, taking another page from Seattle, Seattle's Streets Illustrated plan. I don't know if their plans directly came from NACTO or were highly influenced by NACTO, but they have a great breakdown of their different street classifications and, what they're looking at depending on, what kind of street it is, how wide are the sidewalks, how wide is the planting strip, how many travel lanes are there, how many miscellaneous or, parking strips, is it on both sides, is it on one side, is it a flex? And so they really have it broken down to every single street type. So again, I'm not sure if those were influenced by NACTO, if they kind of came up with it on their own.
Well, the
John would know.
good news is our engineers are from the city of Seattle.
Yeah, that's
and so I'm sure that they worked on a lot of that work at Seattle, but I can have a conversation with our traffic engineer, John, and see what is on the docket for that, and that the Planning Commission would like to keep abreast of whatever's going on there. Like I said, I'm not sure. I know that there is work being done by them for various things, and then also, I guess the other high priority thing is the Main Street Phase 2, depending on federal funding, and then what are next steps for that. So anyways, that's kind of what's going on there.
Okay, cool. I know it was pointed out to me that I guess somewhere down in the errata of the comprehensive plan, like there was sort of a document that I want to say Fair and Piers put together that had like some like a bike master plan, and it didn't really correspond to some things. So it seems like there's some some work that we still need to do to go
Yep.
from that to.
Yeah, they're working on additional work. Fair and Piers is working on additional work as far as impact fees and different analysis with engineering. So I can bring back some more information from them of kind of how they're structuring their work plan this year out of Public Works and Engineering as well. And I do know that the urban tree plan is getting completed. I'm not sure what is going to come out of that necessarily. This work plan is kind of the things that I know, as much as I can know what those things are, but at least of what I think that I know at this point. So anyways, yeah, but we can add the sub areas definitely for fall, winter of next year, and really focus on boundaries and of those, and then discussion on neighborhoods and that type of thing. So, conversation, are there several neighborhoods inside the boundaries? Does the boundary need to be altered? All of those things that can set us up for additional work on the different sub areas. And even this conversation that we have about names and all of those good things. And to me, that involves the public, definitely, of how the public sees, what their neighborhoods are, and, kind of what their boundaries are too, right? So, yeah, I think that's achievable.
Yeah, I also like the idea of including the neighborhood area plan, because I know, got a lot to do by July with the zoning. And I can see a situation where we need some extra float to modify, like each of the sort of new neighborhood centers we've created have their own, I think, identities and advantages and challenges. And if we needed some extra float to say, okay, we've got zoning for this, but then the sub area, process gives us some ability to refine those. Like,
Sure.
I feel a little bit more comfortable with having that level of floats. We have compliance, but then we're still able to massage it a little bit further in the year.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's exactly right. We need compliance because if we're not in compliance, then basically we've screwed up any opportunity for state grant funding or otherwise, if there's any moving forward, we'll see. But I don't want to be the reason, we don't want to be the reason that we don't. But I think even in doing our development code amendments and middle housing, we can talk about PUDs, cottage housing. We can go down a list a mile long of things that we need to continue to address. It's, it is basically the first touch, and I think of several other development code amendments and, plan amendments, I think that we need to refine. So.
Yeah, and it sounds like we've set ourselves up strategically where we have some float from other things that have been sort
Yeah.
of building over time.
Yeah,
So the sub area planning.
That's
and,
kind of what we're trying to do
this.
here.
So I
Yeah.
think that I'm comfortable with that. And
Okay.
then somehow if we're able to squeeze the TMP in there, it's also
Yeah,
a thing.
and
that
I'll find out about what they're up to specifically planning wise on engineering.
Yeah, maybe it's good to I don't know, if it rolls in with, in my mind, engineering design standards are kind of related. Would you agree? Or it's downstream of the TMP.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the city's historically kind of done a TMP, I think, where, and it's debatable about the quality, but I think where we were really, frankly, hanging out big time was the lack of design standards, specifically like you're talking about. We have a collector. What's our standard? We have these different road classifications, details. We had, certain details and specifications that got down in the weeds, but, there's that middle part, which is, what is this supposed to look like more from an urban design level, and then down to kind of like the details and specifications. And we always seem to be missing that middle part, which is important.
Yeah.
So anyways, I think we have that now. We just need to make sure that when, like all things, when we're crafting something, what the intent was is actually working out. And what isn't working out, then let's go back and fix it or improve it and make it do what the intent was. So
Yeah.
I think you're going to be seeing more transportation stuff as well. But I can let you know specifically, we can talk about that.
Great, yeah, if there's a way to roll it in sort of with the, even if we're not due for the TMP update this year, rolling it in kind of with the engineering street manual or engineering design manual, and starting to address those things, I think will help us prepare a better TMP when we're ready.
All right, are we ready to move on to your annual report?
Well, let me just double check.
Oh, go ahead.
Make sure, is there anybody else
yeah.
that had any questions or comments regarding the work plan?
Nothing at this time.
Nothing from me. Thanks.
All right. Sounds like we are good to
Okay.
move on. So we'll go on to,
And I apologize to the commissioners that are online. We have copies of your annual report, but I'll go over it briefly. This is what we show City Council every year of the work that you guys have done the previous year. And my understanding is Commissioner Wu, you have a photo scheduled coming up here, I believe this week, for us to add your photo into members of the Planning Commission. So that will be taken care of before this gets to City Council, where everyone will have a smiling, all of you guys are smiling, that's pretty cool, a photo. So Commissioner Wu, you need to smile in your photo. Actually, it seems like that's a requirement. Anyways, and then we have some cool pictures of some of the things that happened this last year as far as the comp plan, the land use map, adoption of the new stormwater plan and engineering development manual, and of course, opening of the light rail station. So accomplishments for code amendments. You guys worked on the text amendment for private recreational facilities. You also worked on some amendments regarding Chapter 1510 for fire code official, some changes in state legislation regarding the duties of it kind of a nuance of what's responsibilities of a fire marshal versus the fire code official. So trying to be very specific at the state level of when you're talking about this is fire code lingo, boxes and trucks versus the code part of the fire code. And so there was some, I guess, long-term misunderstandings of what was the requirement or what was the intent of the fire code. And so we amended that for that chapter to clarify that. And then you guys reviewed and recommended the engineering development manual as well for the comp plan, which took up a better part of your efforts this past year. You were involved, some of you were actually involved in the CPEG, which is not shown on here, but you discussed the vision statement alternatives. That was a robust conversation. Reviewed the growth alternatives, sub-area workshops. We had discussion on all the elements of the comp plan, discussion on the draft land use maps and designations, reviewed the environmental impact statement, which we will now use for our code updates, and then recommended adoption of the final environmental impact statement. That was pretty critical to the work that we were doing that needed badly updating. Other activities that you guys were a part of, you reviewed and recommended adoption of the Economic Development Strategic Plan. You reviewed the draft Stormwater Comprehensive Plan. You folks were involved in a lot of activities around the Sound Transit opening, which occurred in August of this past year. You had a presentation and an overview on the Urban Forestry Management Plan that is nearing completion. And then we received a grant and you reviewed a draft middle housing code update. That is also due by June of this year. And my intent is to roll that work into the other middle housing work that we're doing to complete that effort. There's not a requirement in state law that it's actually adopted per se, but our intent, of course, is that we have other legislation for middle housing, so make that all applicable to how we're moving forward and let the work that's been done inform what that looks like. So we'll be doing that. Is there anything that you folks can remember? We went back through all the agendas and materials for some of the things that you had done. Do you recall anything that we're missing?
I think the economic vitality plan, I know it's kind of rolled in with the other stuff, but
Reviewed and recommended adoption of the Economic Development Strategic Plan.
okay, that's what that is. So
Yeah.
So much stuff, it's hard to recall. Because like most it's probably, most of it's probably covered under this. It's just, we had many distinct conversations that sometimes went multiple meetings, so it's a lot of stuff was discussed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you forget until you go back over stuff. It's like, yeah, what did I eat last week? What did we do all last year as on the planning commission? I mean, it's like, oh yeah, we did the comp plan, but then you go back over some of the other stuff that you did as well. So,
One
go ahead.
one sort of meta accomplishment that I think the people in charge of this should be proud of is that this is kind of a lot of big stuff, but we figured out a pretty efficient way of working that let us review things and then talk about them and then maybe review them again and talk about them, which I think may not be common to all of the organizations in the city. So I would say that's almost an accomplishment, not necessarily of planning, but just of like group work.
Time management.
Well, and also like, ensuring that people are able to be heard instead of, just whoever talks the most at the meetings dominates.
Yeah, and I also, we have a ways to go, I think, with even getting better with public outreach, and are trying to continue to improve that. But one of the things I appreciated with our process is that there's a tendency that you put an ad in the paper, or you do a public notice, and you check the box. And I think when we're trying to do real outreach to reach folks in all folks in the community, not just the people that will come to the meetings, but maybe the people that have never come to a meeting. And I think what I appreciated this past year, and I'm seeing it even when we had the open house on the Main Street, which Commissioner Betcher showed up to that, is we're seeing more faces that I've never seen come to other things previously. And so that's pretty cool that we're continuing to see, people that are involved, which is great, and they come to things, but I think we're starting to make some headway too on other folks coming and participating in things that we haven't seen before. So that's pretty neat. And hopefully we'll continue to have that where people feel comfortable if we reach out to the sub areas or we reach out for certain things that we're going to get more folks to attend. So if we can do that, that will be cool.
Yeah, that's, there's always room for improvement, and it might come across as patting ourselves in the back too much, but I would say these kind of things are accomplishments too.
Cool. All right, so I think that covers what we typically hand off to council, and then Chair Batista gives them a memo. We can update these materials, get Commissioner Wu's picture on here, make sure all of our dates are what they need to be for that March 13th presentation. And so I guess I need from you folks how you would like to handle presenting to the council.
I'm happy to let staff do it.
And I'm happy to do that. I mean, if you guys want me to go up and present, this, happy to do it. If somebody wants to, or the group wants to join or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, given that every year we have such a laundry list of items that we did and that we're presenting, and council usually has, very, very specific questions, and it's usually easier for staff to answer those because they're more intimately familiar with them or have dealt with them, beyond from what we did in the meeting. So I find that's usually easier. I know some of the groups, they come up there, and we've done this in the past too, where everybody says something, and then, because we work on so much, just us alone could be 45 minutes talking. So And since they're having everybody come at the same meeting now, and we're going first,
Yeah.
it's probably the shorter and the briefer. It's probably the better.
All right.
And I've noticed that as council now has been, most of our council members have been on the council for a while. There's kind of, every year they're on, they kind of ask less and less. Because, they've gotten their feet wet and they kind of know the show. And so they don't have as many questions as they used to. I just jinxed this.
We would still show up for emotional support, though, right? What is the date?
Yeah, please. I mean, and I would love to introduce anybody that comes to the Planning Commission meeting. I think it's important. You guys don't get enough recognition as planning commissioners. And so happy to introduce any and all planning commissioners that come. I think that that's important.
We'll have to figure that out ahead of time, because usually when we present, if we're all there, then we have, usually they have.
Yeah, and they'll do that. They'll advertise it that there will be, group quorums, and so that's fine. So anybody that wants to come and attend, please do so, and I'll be happy to present your work that you did last year. And then say, here's your work program for next year. So I will add the sub area of work, and then I will talk to engineering about what's transpiring as far as the engineering work to add to the work plan.
Probably a quick question is, maybe this is a strange place to ask it, but would you say that you've been pretty well supported by council in their, we've kind of had to do a lot of work and we've had to approve, budget for things. Would you say that has been adequate? Would you say that has been, have you received any pushback at all?
No, not at all, as a matter of fact. And I think part of that was the intent of how we took the comp plan materials to council last time, is that, instead of having a tendency to do all the work and then give it to folks at the end of the day, kind of in a package, of trying to do more so where we're making the sausage together. Mm-hmm. And then we're also updating council as we go. And so hopefully everybody feels like they're informed of where we're at and where we're headed by the time we get to those work sessions and those public hearings. So that's the intent. I would like to do that with everything that we do on the kind of on the larger scale that that's our intent, is that we're trying to get that information out, not only to council and planning commission, but to the public as well, that we're trying to do a good job of, where that doesn't feel like we're kind of our mantra that we use internally is no surprises. So we're not trying to surprise anybody. We're not trying to do things where people don't feel like they were informed and all of a sudden they're at a council meeting and we're trying to get something adopted, but that people have an opportunity to participate or provide their comments or come to meetings as far as what we're up to. So anyways, we'll just try to keep doing that, and hopefully I think that's a better process when we get to adoption point of where that seems to go a lot better than otherwise. So
yeah, I think if there's maybe a nice thing to express to council is that they've been supporting us in the past with time and resources and effort.
Sure.
And we're not done yet. It's still coming. I'm sure it'll be conveyed, but if I were to speak, that's probably what I would ask or convey.
And I can definitely convey on behalf of the Planning Commission, if that's what you would like to convey, that you've appreciated the support this past year from the council on the work that you've completed.
Yeah, and we still have more support that we need
Oh, yeah.
because we still got a lot to do, and this is a really critical time. So
Yeah. Okay.
I would just add, it's always nice when you're able to get extra money to bring on extra support in terms of consultants, but I definitely see the benefit of being able to do it in-house as well. And if it ends up being, it's like that, you made, those extra hands on deck, if you can hire them on internally and keep them, especially since permitting timelines are being regulated more. It's like you might need those extra hands anyway just to be compliant with the law. And then we have the added bonus of having the extra help that's in-house. So you're not having to start from scratch when the new cycle starts and it's a different consultant and,
Yeah. No, I agree.
you've taken 2 steps back before you've even started. And it's just like, there's something to be said to having it be done
Yeah, I think,
in-house as much as possible.
and it's true. I think the difference is, previously there was a lot of what we call current planning, land use permitting at local jurisdictions, and that was the bulk of the work. And it still is a lot of the work that we do day in, out, all the building permits and electrical permits and land use permits and all that stuff that I call it our day job, that we do every day. But the stuff, the planning work that you guys are doing is becoming a priority every year, and a lot more work that's getting done every year. And there's really not a separate staff to do that work. It's kind of all the usual suspects. So yeah, it doesn't get less. It's gotten more over the last several years to get this work done. So appreciate that there's some understanding of that. So
Just double checking, does anybody else have any comments on the work, the presentation for the report? Not hearing or
No,
seeing.
no comments, but I'm going to try to be there. I'm glad it's on a Thursday because I can probably leave early. Monday, Tuesdays for me are super duper busy. Towards the end of the week, I can flex a little bit more. So I'm going to try to be there to support.
thank you.
All right, so I think we're ready to move on. Looks like director's report.
All right. So, yep, mark your calendars for March 13 for that. I alluded a little bit about being under contract with Echo Northwest in Methuen, and kind of already went over some of the tentative stuff that we're looking at. In addition, on March 5th, there is the first class of the Mountlake Terrace Community Academy. And they start this week, I believe is their first session, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm attending, and it is this Wednesday.
Oh, you are? Oh, are you a class member?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to be bribing you when we come speak to you on March 5th, but don't tell anybody.
Okay, I won't. It will be a secret.
I've made this an internal competition of where CED is going to be liked the most, hopefully. But anyways, we're presenting on March 5th. Finance will be doing part of the class, and then our group will also be presenting. I believe that you guys are welcome to attend any of these sessions as Planning Commission if you would like to, in addition to the class. Is my understanding there's 32 folks altogether that are participating in this first class, and it's basically to help community members better understand all the different functions of local government. So the city manager's office, which is the clerk and communications, and all of those things will be discussed, and, city manager form of government, and all those good things that you learned in high school. And then just getting more into detail about the different functions that happen throughout the city, and understanding what everybody does and why do we have these people and what do these people do and what's the difference and what does Public Works do versus engineering, and why do we have building permits and why do we have planning and stupid stuff like that and all those good things. So anyways, but we're hoping to make it fun, and I'm having my team come, all of us to be there to kind of join in on who are all these people behind the counter and what they do and what functions that we serve the community. So anyways, if you have some time, March 5th we'll be presenting at that as well. Like I said, there was a open house for Main Street Phase 2, which is 56th Avenue, that was held week before last. There was great attendance. I think we counted about 75 participants. There were 2 presentations that were done as part of that, and that was just to explain where we are in the project and the grant funding situation that we find ourselves in, and kind of where we go from here, depending on the outcome of those circumstances, and what the city is doing in the meantime as far as that project goes. So anyways, I believe that presentation was recorded and is online if anybody wants to take a look at that. From city engineer gave a presentation, and I'm not sure if they recorded the first one or the second one, but there were 2 that were, it was basically the same presentation that was given. So, that's all I have. We are down, now that Sarah was promoted to senior planner, we have, job notice out for associate planner currently, and then we are trying to fill our permit specialist position, which is our front counter position, which is permit intake, and working with the public, answering the phones, working the front counter, and basically trying to herd cats and organize all the activities that we do. So it's a very fast paced, it's a lot of responsibility, and looking for someone to come fill that position. I know that we have some interviews that have been scheduled for that, so hoping to get that filled, and then we will lean into getting the associate planner position filled so we can be fully staffed again. So that's kind of where we're at right now in the department too, just FYI. So a lot going on.
Anybody have any questions for the director?
No questions.
Okay. So not hearing or seeing anything, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item, miscellaneous business by call of planning commissioners. Anybody have any miscellaneous business? Yes, no?
It's maybe more of a comment. While driving down 228th, the new residential development that they built at Creekside Church, the lights shine up in my eyes and blind me a bit. I assume we'll be getting to that level of granularity in zoning, but I guess that was actually, I probably should have gone under director's question, but is that something that we'll be looking at in development standards?
Okay, so going up 228th.
Or coming down 228th west of 66th,
Okay.
driving down the hill,
Yeah.
there's like a big light shining up at the drivers. And I know light pollution and things like that.
So is that from other vehicles or is that from the development?
I think it's from the development. Yeah, it's their landscaping sign. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I'm not sure if that's in our development standards, but if that is something we're looking at,
Okay.
at that level of granularity.
Okay, we can definitely talk about that. I mean, that might be in addition to our shielding landscaping. I wasn't aware that that was like a thing, but you noticed it too, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
okay.
don't, I don't, yeah, I don't remember seeing it in our development standards, but I think like that level of granularity is good, but I can see us having.
Does or doesn't fall within the standards?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
We do have standards for shielding light, like on buildings and for like street lighting. But if it's landscaping lighting, I don't know. I don't think we do have necessarily a shielding standard. I'll drive by there sometime in the evening. It's when it happens. Okay, yeah. Interesting, because yeah, that might be a miss of just like, because there is light shielding requirements.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, for other things.
cool. Thanks. I was just curious.
Yeah,
Maybe interesting to, when you drive by to see, I have not seen it. I don't get over that part of the city very often. But I know at work, a lot of the questions that we always get is, can I do it? And they want to do it in the right of way. So it'd be interesting to see where this lighting is actually placed. If it's pretty far in? Okay.
Probably should have waited till after the meeting. Sorry.
that's okay. No, I mean, that's good.
Okay, anybody else?
Nothing.
Not hearing or seeing anything, so we'll go ahead and declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.